they're visiting?
Right.
Or do you just believe that there's a possibility, but you don't believe in any of the evidence that they've been here?
Right.
Or do you believe in both?
Right. Absolutely. So, with that being said, let's get into our first story. We're going to talk about the Ariel School encounter. Ogul, this is your recommendation on this story. You said you heard it before, so
Yeah.
I'm going to run through the facts of the story and we're going to discuss it through. So, let's start off with our first story by getting weird, and we're going really weird. Okay, so those who are not familiar with the Ariel School encounter, it's pretty much a story of in 1994. Teachers and school officials at the Ariel School, and I'm going to butcher the name of this town, Rumwa, Zimbabwe, were astonished when no less than 62, again, 62 students claimed that they had a bizarre and terrifyingly apocalyptic encounter with a UFO and its unearthly occupants.
Ages 6 to 12. 62 students.
62 students between 6 and 12 in Zimbabwe. If you don't know where Zimbabwe is, turn off this podcast and go back to elementary school. I'm not telling you where Zimbabwe is. You should already know where Zimbabwe is. But all right, here's a story. On Friday, September 16th, 1994, the Republic of Zimbabwe's Ariel School, a private elementary school about 20 miles outside the capital city of Harare, became host to one of the most unusual cases in the history of ufology, when a throng of over 60 school children claimed to have a run-in with a pair of creatures not from this world. The event began approximately at 10:15 a.m. while the children, who ranged again from 5 to 12 years old and were of African, Asiatic, and European descent, were playing in a field adjacent to the school during their mid-morning break at the already scorching 91-degree day. Damn!
Gah.
God fucking Christ.
What time of the year is this, by the way?
This is September.
Ugh. Okay.
Oh, God. The children claimed that they were playing. They noticed 3 silver balls scorching in the sky above the school. These orbs, which quickly caught the attention of the whole group and immediately flashed red and would disappear in a burst of light and then reappeared in the other section of the sky. According to the eyewitnesses, these mysterious metallic objects vanished and rematerialized 3 more times before slowly descending towards the school following a line of transmission towers. The anxious kids then claimed that one of the silver UFOs dropped lower than the others and landed or hovered just above the ground in a cluster of gum trees about 300 feet from where they were playing. Throughout the area where the UFO had landed was forbidden to the children due to the proliferation of thorn bushes, poisonous snakes, and spiders. It was not fenced off from the schoolyard, however. This allowed the still frightened yet intensely curious kids to begin to approach the unusual object. It was at that moment that this already strange scene took a bizarre turn when a small, black-clad humanoid figure approximately 3 feet in height emerged from the top of the object. The witnesses claimed that the being's suit was shiny and tight-fitting. They also stated that it had a scrawny neck, a narrow face, thin arms and legs, long black hair, and huge eyes like rugby balls. The entity, apparently unaware of the growing crowd of spectators, scrambled down to the rough patch of earth, presumably to explore the terrain, not unlike the bizarre, geographically inclined beings that landed in Russia's city of Zornovis. I butchered that name, in 1989. The creatures apparently moved back and forth in the scrub brush like it was bouncing as if it were on the moon, but not quite so much. This description that the kids give is also similar to 2 Finnish lumberjacks who in 1971 claimed to have encountered a green spacesuit-clad 3-foot alien known as the Kinluma humanoid, that also seemed to exhibit the apparent lack of weight while on terra firma. It was at this point that a second shiny suited entity emerged from the top of the craft, while the first seemed to almost inadvertently approach the children. The younger kids, horrified by this obsessively interstellar apparitions, began screaming in terror and calling out for help. Apparently, they believe these creatures to be demons, known as Tukoloshi, which are notorious for devouring young children. The terrified kids ran into the school, leaving the older students behind. The first humanoid, suddenly aware of the youthful eyes that were watching its every move, disappeared without warning. Within seconds, the same creature, or one identical to it, reemerged behind the craft. The two beings stared motionlessly at the lingering children. When the panic-stricken horde of youngsters entered the school, the hallways were eerily vacant because the teachers were all attending a faculty meeting. The kids then came across the only adult, the mother of one of the students who were operating the school's tuck shop. Apparently, a tuck shop is a snack bar where candy and soda are sold.
Okay.
Sadly, this unnamed woman refused to leave her post unattended, believing perhaps that this was nothing more than an elaborate ruse fabricated by the students to gain access to her candy. The teachers at the school later admitted that the 62 children were essentially unsupervised in the schoolyard during the morning recess and claimed that they ignored the students' fearful cries, assuming they were nothing more than a missile screeches often associated with schoolyard play. The older students who remained outside, still enthralled by the UFO and its inhabitants, claims that the creatures communicated with them telepathically, though what one still visibly frightened girl described as their horrible eyes. Another student, who we'll call in this podcast Lisa, claimed that she felt horrible for the rest of the day, unable to shake the horrifying images that had been implanted in her brain by the beings. She believed that they wanted to convey to the human race a grave warning to stop destroying the planet or face the consequences. The world is going to end, maybe because we don't look after our planet or the air. Like all the trees will go down and there will be no air. People will be dying. Those thoughts came from the man's eyes. 10-year-old Isabel, another girl, also expressed how frightened these creatures were. He just stared. He was scary. We were trying not to look at him because he was scary. My eyes and feelings went with him. Eliza claimed that the overwhelming sensation that she had staring at the aliens' horrific vintages were we are going to harm the Earth. Another student also indicated that these extraterrestrials seemed to feel that human technology was quickly growing out of control and suggests something is going to happen and that we need to be careful with our technology. Let's stop there for a second. Ogul, let me get your thoughts.
I mean, it's frightening what these kids must have experienced here. You're talking about a group of school children who, unannounced to them, go out to play on recess and have this bizarre encounter.
Right.
Seeing UFOs and flying objects alone is one thing, but when you're talking about some sort of creatures coming out of the UFOs and coming down and somehow telepathically communicating with these kids, and all of these kids, as we sort of keep reading into the story, all of these kids are sort of reporting a very, very, very similar incident, not just with like their physical descriptions of what they saw, but the feelings they had in these moments. Not just of like sheer terror, but also this like message that comes over and over about the aliens warning them about some sort of like impending doom, or the damage we're doing to our own Earth, sort of message. So fascinated. I'm fascinated by the story. I'm sort of listening here, silently sort of listening to what you're reading and like sort of compiling that on top of the stuff I already know about story.
Right.
So yeah, that's all I have to say. What do you think so far?
Okay. Well, the tale that these kids are telling reminds me of the Hopkinsville encounter and Mothman.
Yes, definitely Mothman.
Mothman with the apocalyptic, like we're doing damage to the earth, we're going to destroy the earth sort of message, and the Hopkinsville encounter where you supposedly see the UFO, then the UFO land, and then these creatures come out of the woods. If people are not too familiar with the Hopkinsville encounter, we did an episode on it very early in our starting this podcast. You can find it down the line on where you get your podcast, the Kelly Hopkinsville encounter. It reminds me of that. These are kids. I can't imagine if this happened, the amount of terror running through these kids. You see something you've never seen before, and something out of your nightmares, or worse than something you can't even imagine.
I mean, it's like we should definitely point out it's 1994 in Zimbabwe.
Exactly.
Like before the internet, before drones, before any sort of like, not any sort, but like, I don't know, was the military flying like unidentified crafts and landing in schoolyards of Zimbabwe private schools?
Highly doubt it.
Like, the what do you want to call it? The only point of reference these kids might have, is Hollywood. Likely.
Yeah. And I'm not too sure on how many Hollywood films Zimbabwe gets. I don't think it's like the rest of the Western world, or even China for that matter. They might have gotten a few, and they might have created some. I'm not too sure about Zimbabwean cinema.
I mean, maybe you make a point there, but like this is a private school, so the assumption is that their parents are somewhat wealthy.
Yeah, because it's not like it's a mix. It's kids that are originally from Zimbabwe or other parts of Africa, kids from Asia, and European kids. So I'm assuming some white kids there too, or
right.
So it's a diverse group of kids there in this private school. So there might have been maybe the European kids. I mean, I'm thinking as if as a believer and also a skeptic, because these questions are going to come up as that skeptics might have. That maybe the European kids had seen films like this, and maybe they influenced the other kids to say something. I don't know. I mean, I'm judging from what I'm going to find the story already. The story sounds horrible. It's being a child. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep after seeing something like that.
Yep. Keep going with the story, because like, it gets more interesting, but like, I agree with you, and I double down on the point that like this shit must have been terrifying, regardless of what we think it is. Like the kids saw something.
Yeah. Let's keep going on with the story. Following the silent yet powerful message, which seemed profoundly more direct than any vague warnings of doom coming from anyone else, the beings disappeared again, and the silvery oval-shaped object ascended through the gum trees at an incredible velocity and vanished. The entire event only lasted about 15 minutes. It also should be noted that scores of people who have had alien encounters also claim to have been shown apocalyptic visions by their extraterrestrial captors.
Mm-hmm.
i.e.,